Well, welcome along to our Workplace Innovation Expert Series. I'm Peter Reilly, Head of Modern Workplace at Bytes, and we have a different speaker for each segment of this part of our event. For this presentation, we've invited two experts along. We have Chris College and Nikki Curtis to speak to us today about Azure Virtual Desktop. So, Chris, Nikki, would you just like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Chris College. I'm an Azure sales engineer that sits in our technical pre-sales team. So my role at Bytes is largely talking to our customers who are early on in their journeys to Azure. They know that they need to do something with Azure in general or with cloud in general, and they're looking at how that all comes together into a project. So this team is backed by a team of delivery engineers with all different kinds of skill sets and expertise, and it's my job to figure out which ones to get involved with our customers and how to pull projects together when it relates to cloud. Over to you, Nikki.
Hi, my name's Nikki Curtis. I work as a solutions consultant at Byte. I work in the modern workspace team as well. I'm heavily focused on Microsoft at the moment and done quite a lot of work in AVD in the past. And my job really is to listen to customers' requirements, their problems, and kind of come up with a solution that helps them get along the next step in their journey.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Nikki. So before we start, I wanted to let you both know that I've got a yellow card with me today. In case the words COVID, hybrid working, and unprecedented are mentioned. So if you say one of those three words, I'm going to do Davina McCall on you. However, if you can use the word phlegmatic and discombobulated, then you get two shining stars. So let's see how we go, gents. AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop. Just to give you my distorted view, from my perspective, AVD came and conquered straight away by being hugely successful initially. But since I feel like it's gone quiet, and now when you check back with Microsoft, there's like 1 billion new features that Microsoft have added. Chris, tell me what your take is on AVD as it stands right now. Is it still the same game-changing product that Microsoft made such a noise about initially?
It's a really great question, Pete. And I had no idea about the yellow card, so in panic mode here with my standard answer, as opposed to your phlegmatic introduction there. Personally, I think AVD is still evolving, right? When AVD first hit the market and when it was the first big thing, they almost timed the market dead on with certain global events that were going on at the time. And a lot of people saw it as a quick step to adopt. And they could deliver something that would do for a period of time that allowed them to adapt to that market change. So, you know, it was a case of they needed to deliver endpoints to the customers. The cloud seemed like the most suitable way of doing that. The data center was just providing too unfeasible a solution to be able to go and roll them out. And so people naturally looked to cloud and they naturally turned to Microsoft, and Microsoft naturally said, well, look, great, we've got this thing called AVD and you can use it. I think what people realized is that that was good enough to get by, but at scale, it introduced the management overhead that they would have to own for the long term because of the investment in there. And so people started to look at other ways of managing it. Obviously, that came in conjunction with a hiring, let's call it a crisis that happened in Azure, where Azure skills were heavily in demand. And so what Microsoft has been gradually doing is bringing out more feature sets to make the management of AVD more streamlined. They're reacting to the customer's requirements and the customer's pain points that they're saying. Is it fully there yet? Well, actually, when you compare it to some of the platforms that exist that provide a layer on top of AVD, it's still a bit more of an overhead to manage than some of those things, but it is a good way of delivering desktops in the cloud.
I mean, certainly. I mean, that's where the shift certainly seems to be from a cloud perspective. Is it kind of like, you know, certainly there seems to be an increased focus in Microsoft Azure with as a solution for desktops, whether that's virtual or a managed desktop in Microsoft 365. Therefore, would you say it's now more of a commercial conversation when you look at AVD versus other VDI solutions like Citrix, VMware Horizon, W365 even?
Yeah, I think it absolutely is a commercial conversation. When we look at the technical elements of it, obviously Microsoft has an edge at the fact that, you know, a lot of people have adopted M365, and, you know, their data and their licensing requirements require them to have that virtual desktop living close to their 365 environments, and that's kind of a thing that just makes sense to do, right? Conversely to that, I think a lot of the time people do overlook the management overhead of AVD. In a lot of people at Microsoft ends, it's the best thing since sliced bread and really easy to manage and a few clicks of a button. But when they actually have to operate it at scale for a large amount of people, large amount of profiles of a large amount of applications, some of the work is time consuming. You're still going to need to invest in resources that not only know how to manage an endpoint, but also know how to manage Azure environments. You still manage, you know, a fair amount of things that aren't part of the AVD sphere when you roll out a virtual desktop solution using AVD. So if that is something that you have the skills for internally to do already, then AVD is a very lucrative conversation to have commercially. And also, if you can quantify the amount of resources you'd need to bring on either from a third party or from you know, hiring some Azure skills, if you can quantify that versus the cost of, you know, Citrix licensing or VMware Horizons and things like that, that sort of provide a management plane that would be doing all of those things for you, then yeah, it really just comes down to the nuts and bolts. Highlighted by the fact that, you know, Citrix have a calculator that basically estimates how long it takes to manage your standard AVD environments, and they offset that against the licensing costs to show you that the savings, that there are potential savings. But yeah, to answer your question, it is a commercial question most of the time.
Yeah, and it's a good point you made, because you do get ones who really, really do like virtual desktops. It's a bit of a Marmite technology. You know, you get ones who really, really love it, or you get ones who say it's the worst thing ever and they never want to touch it again. You could say bit discombobulated, maybe. People, that's the sort of reaction that people have towards VDI. Nikki, what's your thoughts about where VDI has its place? Is it still got its place in people's strategies? More specifically around AVD, is that still an answer?
I think certainly it is, but I think a lot of the time customers are maybe oversold on AVD as being the solution for everything. When I see AVD as really just providing you a shell, it's like giving you 1,000 new laptops and say, right, here you go. You don't have to worry anything more. You still got to manage them. You still got to update them. You still got to secure them. And AVD doesn't solve that. It just provides, you know, the kind of shell in order for you to do that. So AVD, I believe, is a good solution. But just thinking you're going to go AVD and that's going to solve everything is that's certainly not the case. Management is still very key to AVD. You've got to manage Windows 10, manage the updates, think about how you're going to get applications on it, think about the user experience. And I see AVD as just really a platform for hosting that shell, of which you still got to manage, probably very similar to how you're managing your traditional devices at the moment. That's my thought. But when you say, is it, I think AVD is a very good solution, but it is just a shell, and you need to build up upon that to have something that's presentable and managed and secure in your environment, is my thought.
So I mean, it's good. It's a good point you make. It's still very relevant, but is it that it's still relevant despite the recent the recent events? We could say, is there anything else that's driving that shift to virtual desktop?
There's lots of things that are happening. Windows 11, you could argue with requirements for Windows 11. I mean, most people have got TPM chips and meet the requirements of Windows 11, but AVD is a great way to kind of dip your toe in the water with Windows 11 and give you some proof of concepts on Windows 11 and show you what the Windows 11 desktop could be. So I'm seeing some customers are using AVDs to kind of pilot the new devices, whilst their current devices don't support the minimum requirements of Windows 11. So I see lots of benefits for it. And of course, there's a whole working from home for which people are doing for some reason. Who knows?
I think
no idea why.
Just to add to that a little bit, Pete, I think that's traditional Microsoft, right? They'll give you a platform with which to go and build a solution. They'll give you a platform to say, look, if you've got this pain, this could help you resolve that. So, you know, what we're seeing, you know, global events aside, what we're seeing is actually, you know, people saying, ISVs, for example, saying, how are we going to deliver apps into enterprises that need secure endpoints in a way that they've pre-approved it, right? So they're using things like remote apps to basically present it in the Windows, and it caches a version of it, so it just looks like a native app, but actually it's running in an environment that's secure. We're looking at, you know, again, workforces being more scalable than ever before, completely not related to global events. It's just the way that businesses operate nowadays is, you know, they're acquiring new businesses. There's more M&A activity than ever before, more people onboarding, and people wanting to not own the risk of onboarding a load of people that could be gone in a couple of months. And therefore, why would you invest in hardware? Why would you not just invest in a platform that could scale and grow? And I think lastly, well, two more points is that actually bring your own device is a massive selling point at the moment to enterprises that want to appear a bit more modern and attract a younger workforce. They want to enable them to bring their own device, but they still need to give them access to corporate applications which need to be in a secure environment. And AVD is just a way of enterprises being able to build that out.
Yeah, certainly is, albeit an expensive one, but yeah, the point is relevant. I think, you know, it's really interesting insights into what you're seeing, guys. I think the points you've made have been really interesting. One of the things I definitely want to ask though before we conclude this is, you know, bearing in mind this series is all about innovation, and the forecast is from the experts that this will turn into more of away from a VDI market, more to a VDAS market, where that's forecasted to grow 68% in 2021. So they reckon by 2024, 80% of all virtual desktops will be as a desktop as a service model. So do we think this is an accurate prediction? Do we think companies risk putting all their eggs in one basket if they go down this VDAS route? What's your thoughts?
Nikki, do you want me to? I'll sort of give my opinion first, and then you can weigh in with. You can proffer an opinion afterwards. I think for me, companies are the VDAS conversation is all about enterprises looking to have a cost per user model, right? They want to be able to say, if I acquire 500 of this kind of staff member, it's going to cost me their M365 license, their Windows 365 license, or other virtual desktop as a service license. It's going to cost me the Salesforce license, the, you know, XYZ licenses that you have as an IT over, or you have as a business overhead for that individual user. And the VDAS market enables organizations to say, well, this is how much it's going to cost me to provide them with a desktop endpoint. And that's where it's really useful to organizations. It was probably the same conversation that was had with many people moving to M365. That turned out to be, you know, a lot of organizations run very successfly on M365. I don't, you know, you rarely see people moving back to Exchange on-prem and things like that. So, you know, I don't really think it's a huge case of all your eggs in one basket, because don't forget, you can always change virtual desktop as a service provider, right? It's not a lock-in. You're not locked into anything. I think Windows is still going to be the main platform for what enterprise workloads and enterprise IT. And as long as you can run Windows workloads in multiple clouds and multiple VDAS providers, I don't really feel like you're locked in there too much.
No, and I think with AVD, you're going to be managing AVD the same way as you're managing your traditional workloads at the moment. So if you move across to AVD, your management potentially can stay the same depending on what you're using. So as you just mentioned, you can easily move back. I don't think it's a jump in and you're there for good. You could easily kind of dip your toe in the water to do a proof of concept, do small scale migration into it, and come back again if it doesn't suit you.
Yeah.
As I said, it's the shell at the end of the day, and all you're doing is you're changing that shell. Whether that shell's in Azure Virtual Desktop or whether that shell's a traditional laptop, how you manage it, how you secure it is going to be the same. So I don't think it's a jump in, oh, you're in Azure Virtual Desktop, you're there for good now. I don't think that's the case.
I suppose it comes back to how you're managing it.
Yeah.
Because if you've invested a lot of time and effort with skills and invested that in a specific area like Azure, then you're not going to want to shift. And I suppose that's where the VDAS market is definitely going to take up, because it's going to have that impact on teams that haven't got that investment, haven't got those skills to be able to support it. So it's going to be quick and easy to deploy and manage. So certainly some very, very interesting insights from your side. Really do appreciate everything that you've been able to offer in terms of your opinions on that today, guys. Bytes are working very closely with our partners to help our customers deliver virtual desktops, and that could be a Microsoft option. We have funding options that support those projects. But if there is additional technology in the setup, we can help support the way these applications and desktops can also be managed and delivered to your end users. So lots for us to work with you collaboratively on if that's something you wanted to do. But for today, that really concludes our discussion. Please do look at our panel discussion that Chris and Nikki will also be part of, and we'll be covering some interesting viewpoints of all the experts involved in this innovation event. But we'd just like to thank Chris and Nikki for your time and sharing your thoughts with us today. From all of us here at Bytes, thanks for listening.